Michelle Sarunas, and the topic I chose was couples counseling for couples with ADHD. Either both of the folks have ADHD, one person has ADHD, and one person is neurotypical. The reason I chose this topic is because I myself am in marriage that I have ADHD and my husband is neurotypical. We have gone into, as couples do, conflicts about like time management, executive functioning, all those things. So I myself personally want to look for a couples therapist that focuses on ADHD. Really difficult. I'm honestly shocked that I found one person, one therapist that focused on couples with ADHD. I think this is a huge gap, as we've seen in society, more women are finally getting diagnosed with ADHD. I myself got diagnosed like 2 or 3 years ago. So a lot of people are just kind of figuring out their own stuff right now. And yeah, so something that I noticed as well as a second generation Canadian, I have cultural norms from being a Greek woman. So there's a lot of stigma typically in the Greek culture if you have mental illness. So I was also curious about how that affects other cultures and other people. I created a brochure that you'll see soon here. I decided to go with the brochure because as a person with ADHD, I have a short attention span, and a brochure is like such an easy resource for me and my brain to grab, look through, and get all the information I really need, and then go to like the websites that they share at the back to really take a deeper dive into their tips. So with that, I will get into my brochure. In 2020, Tuckman did a video presentation for clinicians like us, and he talked about how neurodivergent couples and neurotypical couples have the same common issues. However, in a neurodivergent couple, it can be intensified. So for example, a regular couple most likely struggles with like completing daily tasks like doing the dishes, emptying the dishwasher, taking the trash out, so on and so forth. In a relationship that is neurodivergent, same problems, it's just a little, for lack of better terms, like catastrophized a little bit, and can become more overwhelming. He discussed that the most important thing to look at first is to talk about time management, specifically talking about the couple's sex life and time management, because in neurodivergent couples, we tend to think we have so much time, and we do not have enough time. So a lot of the times, for example, I'm scrambling to get all of my tasks done before bed, so then I can go to bed and have a good sleep and know that I've finished as much as I could. But that does get in the way of someone's sex life, where you're too tired. You're overwhelmed, like your brain, especially as a neurodivergent person, your brain is just making lists, opening so many tabs in your brain, and you cannot be present. So time management is like a very good spot to look at. How are we managing our time? How effective is it? The next thing he talked about was ADHD education, specifically for the neurotypical in the relationship. I also think knowledge is power for everybody. So as a person with ADHD, it's been really helpful for me to read up on it and understand why my brain does what it does. And so I can also catch those behaviors and try and change them in the moment. For the neurotypical partner, it's really important for them to become educated in ADHD, because sometimes a person with ADHD can forget things, can be super blunt at times, and the neurotypical person can feel that those responses were malicious, rude, and invalidating. So this isn't to like give the person with ADHD an out. It's just to bring more awareness for the neurotypical person so resentment doesn't build too much. And having more education can serve as a tool to bring these concerns up. Yeah. Another thing that Tuckman brought up was removing the scoreboard, no tit for tat nonsense, because it's just going to blow up in both of your faces. Sometimes the neurotypical person has to maybe take over more of the day-to-day tasks, whereas a person with ADHD does those tasks that you can hyper-focus on. So for example, organizing the pantry. The neurotypical person doesn't do that. They do the dishes every day to support the neurodivergent person. The neurodivergent person is able to organize a whole pantry within like an hour. A neurodivergent person, like for me, I'm a very visual person, so I'm cutting the grass so I can see it and be like, that looks so good. I'm organizing the closets, the cabinets. Having like a closed loop task is really helpful. Open loop tasks, neurodivergent people really struggle. Neurotypical people also struggle with this, but it's just a little more difficult for someone with ADHD. So as we know, a person with ADHD has its executive functioning deficit. I don't like to use that term, but it is where a deficit lies. So as we know, a person with ADHD, so just to circle back to time management, with executive functioning, time management is definitely a concern. Routine building can be really difficult for a neurodivergent person. So it is really important to investigate further, start thinking about how to improve your time management skills. Both couples need to work on this together to work as a team. So examples of time management supports are setting alarms on your phone, writing it down, having a shared couples calendar so you know what each other is up to without having to ask too many questions. Having like a designated like clean the house day, or maybe it's like a closing shift before bed. So then it's repetitive and it helps an ADHD individual kind of get into that routine with not a lot of pressure as a closing shift. I love calling it a closing shift. I don't know why that's helpful, but it's helpful. And then something that everything that I read was being compassionate to each other, being empathetic to each other, and remembering like they're not trying to like make my life more difficult. Sometimes as the neurotypical person, you can feel like you're like on an island of chaos, but it is not. The person with neurodivergence does not want to make your life more difficult. You just need to create systems. When reviewing couples that are culturally diverse, there was not a lot of information out there for me. As a person that is a second generation Canadian, I do obviously have experience in this area. I just wish there was more information about it. As a person that is Greek, typically Greek people are more blunt to the point, slightly chaotic at times, and typically, I won't toot my own horn, well I will, we are the life of the party. Does that mean I have ADHD, or does that just fit with my culture? So I think that's such an interesting topic to further research. I have met many people from Eastern Europe who also have the same type of systems or personality as me. So I just find it very interesting when we have conversations, because they do ask, is it ADHD or is that my culture? And it's such a great question. So that's something to think about and consider when you are working with neurodivergent couples, and also couples that are culturally diverse. And that is something to bring up in couples counseling. Like, okay, so you've told me that, for example, you've told me you're Greek. Like, what does that look like in your culture? Like, Do people diagnose people with ADHD in Greece? No. And the stigma around mental health as a second generation Canadian, it's very difficult to overcome, and also be open and honest with your parents about how you're feeling. This is also potentially a reason why a lot of second generation Canadians are not being diagnosed with mental health diagnoses, and not getting early intervention. So something to consider. A book recommendation I have is The Feminist Perspective to ADHD. I will put that in the brochure as well. That book was very, very, very helpful for me, and I've asked my partner to read it as well so he can understand what I'm going through. I've also educated like my mother-in-law and other people with this book, because as we know, ADHD is underdiagnosed in women, and it's really important for women to arm themselves with education, as their husbands as well, but we've been conditioned to take everything on, and reading that book is really helpful to validate your experiences. So that is kind of my spiel for couples counseling with ADHD. Another thing I would add is, if you do want to work with, as a clinician, if you want to work with a couple with ADHD, you should list that on your like marketing website, because people like me who have ADHD, like, we are looking for that because we are really worried no one's going to understand our experience. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed my video, and I hope you enjoy this brochure. I do really love it. But yeah, excited to hear what you guys think. All right, take care.